What's up, IDP Army? It's your man, Jordan Rains, and we are back again with another episode of the IDP Army podcast, where, of course, we are talking mostly IDP, all fantasy football.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
All right, back again, another team, another day. Cleveland Browns today, IDP Army. I know we got a lot of Cleveland Browns fans. I know we got a lot of happy Cleveland Browns fans. Not bitter, hopeful, So that's a good one to have. Hope. It's an important one to have. When you have hope, there's possibility. And this team's got a lot of possibilities, okay? 2020 season, 11-5 record. Kevin Stefanski comes in, coach of the year. Right out of the gates, brings in Austin Hooper. One of the big reasons they kind of started doing the more 12 personnel with the two tight ends, Hunter Harrison Bryant, a little bit of a sleeper pick for me, but I digress. I go too far ahead. While you're listening, go do me a favor, go on iTunes, rate us 5 stars, review us positively. It'll help influence more people to listen to our show, to learn more about fantasy football, to start playing IDP, which is what we want, because IDP fantasy football is the whole game. There's no reason not to play fantasy football with both sides of the team. You watch both sides. When you watch an offensive snap, you're watching a defensive snap. Wouldn't you like to get some points off of that? Wouldn't you like that to matter? And it can for your fantasy team if you play IDP fantasy football. So spread the word, like, subscribe, leave a comment, join the IDP Army, join our Patreon. And every little bit helps, guys, and we appreciate it. We really do. So anyway, back to the Cleveland Browns. Notable draft picks and free agents from 2021. They added Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, middle linebacker, which they needed some linebacker help. Troy Hill, they added one of the better corners. They took him from the Rams. John Johnson, they poached him from the Rams as well. So they got a couple of really good Rams players off that Rams team. Anthony Schwartz comes in as a late-round pick. They also added Anthony Walker, another middle linebacker, on a cheap deal. He's leaving the Colts, comes to them. So there's definitely something to be something stirring on this team. This is a team that had a good defense last year, and I just named off to you 4 guys who could all be slotted to start, meaning they're going to be better options than what was there last year. Interesting note: I was listening to Flying Coach today with Peter Schrager and Sean McVay. And they got a question about, somebody asked Sean, who are some former players that you think could go seamlessly from being players to coaches just because of the way that they understand the game of football. And one of the players that Sean McVay mentioned, which he only mentioned 3 or 4, was John Johnson. He said that's one of the guys that the way he understands and the way he sees football, and he said he could easily, he has so much knowledge. He said he could be a coach seamlessly. So good. That's something you want to hear, Cleveland fans out there. You love that. So we did have some losses on this team. We lost Olivier Vernon. We lost Sheldon Richardson off that defensive line. You guys also added Jadeveon Clowney. So there are some shifts, but for the most part, I think it's a net positive across the board, offense and defense. And then head coach, obviously, Stefanski proved his worth 2 years ago with Minnesota as the play caller, the OC, and then proved his worth this last year immediately with a Cleveland's Brown team that has been in purgatory for quite a while. So let's talk about this offense, and let's just start with the quarterback position as we always do. Baker Mayfield, underdog ADP right now is 153, quarterback 20. So there's not a lot of people building Odell Beckham, Baker Mayfield stacks out there. Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, quarterback 18. That seems fair for Baker. This team didn't really favor the pass. They were much more of a run first team, a very efficient team, running the ball as well with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, two of the best backs in the whole NFL. People are quick to forget Kareem Hunt came in as a rookie and led the league in rushing, which was a feat in and of itself. And he's the second guy on this team right now, and he's still super young. So, they're obviously a run first team, but Baker's going to throw some touchdowns. Like I said, they added Austin Hooper last year, who did miss some time in 2020. He's going to be back this year at full strength. So there's another red zone option for Baker. And you will remember they did have some of those really bad early season weather games. So Baker wasn't able to throw quite as much. I mean, they were kind of forced to run, but they were also so good at running that their whole game plan and the way they played football last year revolved around the run. In Dynasty, I think Baker right now is somebody you can get cheaper than you probably should be able to, given how young he is, and the upside that he really probably does possess. His wide receivers are a little bit interesting, to say the least. Jarvis Landry and Odell Beckham, both LSU stars. Odell Beckham Jr., we're quick to forget he did just come off of 1,000-yard season the year before with Baker, but it wasn't a flashy 1,000. It was 1,035 yards, only 4 touchdowns. It was good to see him get a full season of health in, but it wasn't anything that you're really writing home about, I guess what you would say. So the hopes were high this year, but we saw OBJ in 7 games, only 43 targets, only 23 receptions in 7 games, and that accumulated him 319 yards. Now, I know he did throw a touchdown, so he got some passing yards in there. I know he did have a long rush or 2 that may have ended in a touchdown as well. So he did have a few kind of gadgety plays early in the season that helped buoy his overall score. But, I want my alpha wide receiver, which is what people have talked about him being since coming into the league, in which he was at one point. I want him to score his points the way alpha wide receivers do, and it's catching the ball downfield and in the end zone. OBJ doesn't do that. He hasn't done that in a while. So do what you will with OBJ as your personal preference. Right now, his wide receiver rank, or ADP rather, on Underdog is wide receiver 28. Fantasy Pro has him ranked as wide receiver consensus 24. That's fair to me. That's fair, but I don't want him. I don't see any upside with OBJ. And that's just me just being completely honest with you. There are guys you can get in that area with upside. I don't think OBJ has upside anymore. He's kind of in that, Doug Baldwin, Tyler Boyd mold of player now who, yeah, he's good, but it's not, I don't know if it's going to pan out the way we want it to. And it started out. Jarvis Landry, similar story. ADP right now, wide receiver 46. Fantasy Pros, wide receiver 41. I'm not really sure why people are so off of Jarvis. His game and OBJ's game are not super dissimilar necessarily. And Jarvis actually stays healthy and plays like all the time. So I don't really know why his ADP is so much lower than his. If I had to pick between these two, and I have on the dynasty teams where I have a Browns wide receiver, it is Jarvis Landry. I have him on 1 or 2 teams. Not saying you should do that, but I'm saying if you want to pick one, I'm not trusting OBJ. Even at his suppressed cost, it's still too high for me. That's just me personally. If you're an OBJ guy, go for it. Rashad Higgins is a late round flyer, ADP 22-24, wide receiver 95. Fantasy Pros rank wide receiver 94, so that checks out. And then you want super deep flyer, Donovan Peoples-Jones, which as an end of your bench stash in Dynasty, I'm honestly really into Donovan Peoples-Jones. I don't really have much of him, but I'm into him. So if anyone's out there in my Dynasty leagues want to shoot me some offers over, if you have him, ADP right now on Underdog 245, wide receiver 105, and then Fantasy Pros rank is also 105, which is curious, but we'll take it. So I think none of these guys are really going to get super high because we can't really project any real volume to this team, because they're a run first team. Baker's more of a, he's a pocket passer, but they have such good running backs. They're just going to keep focusing on that, I think. And that's just the way it's gone. And, with the tight ends they have as well, they're going to block and run first and foremost. And as long as that's successful, there's no reason to put the ball into Baker's hands more than you need to. I heard a stat on Flying Coach from Sean McVay. He said like 80% of turnovers happen on passing downs. So it's like if you don't have to, when you're passing the ball, he's like, if you can run instead of pass, he's like, you're already putting yourself in a safer sort of mentality. So for better or worse. So if you have Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, why wouldn't you just give them the ball again? You saw it work last year. Browns had a winning season, 11-5. They almost beat my Chiefs. Almost. Couldn't do it, though. So When we come back, we will talk about the running backs. We will talk about the tight ends. We'll talk about this defense. Then we will get you out here, IDP Army. What's good, IDP Army? It's Jordan Rains, and quickly I want to tell you guys today about the big project I've been working on, the Ultimate IDP Index. The Ultimate IDP Index is the #1 resource for IDP fantasy football players, rookies or veterans for 2021. Inside, you're going to find contract information, tiered IDP rankings, detailed player production profiles going back to 2017, suggested trade values, and a whole lot more, including unique write-ups, unique videos that will only be available within the Ultimate IDP Index. But to me, probably the most valuable thing is the fact that the trade value estimation tool is going to be updated weekly, so you'll always be aware of what a player is worth in your Dynasty League at any given moment. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for the IDP Army Patreon today. Patreon.com/the IDP Army. Join the Black Ops tier and join the IDP Army today. All right, we're back, IDP Army. Appreciate you guys that are over there in the index, are in the Patreon. Tell a friend, tell somebody about the Patreon, tell somebody about the Discord, tell somebody about the index. Let's get more people playing IDP fantasy football. Let's push that forward. Go check out the website as well if you guys want to check out my draft, like redraft draft rankings. Yeah, all right, let's get to it. Let's talk about these tight ends. Austin Hooper right now going as tight end, ADP tight end 24 in Underdog. Fantasy Pros tight end 19. I'm just gonna say this about Austin Hooper. That is stupidly low. All right, like stupid, negligent low. This guy had 70 targets last year. Okay, and he missed 3 games with a meniscus tear. He had surgery. Came down with 46, 435 yards, and 4 touchdowns. He's gonna eat, guys and gals. Like he should be a top 12 consensus tight end, in my opinion. The year before, he had an amazing season. He was getting drafted as a top 12 tight end. And he missed a couple of games. He didn't get quite as many touchdowns as you wanted him to, and then people are just off of him. Tight end 19 is negligence. All right, take advantage of this. I have 90-something% exposure to him in best ball because he's almost always available as the last pick as my second tight end, and I am supremely confident that he's going to finish as the top 12 tight end in this system that Stefanski runs. So that being said, David Njoku, I'm not in on David Njoku anymore. The Dynasty community loved him a few years back. He's super athletic and he does flash occasionally, but he just doesn't pull it all together the way that they want him to. Similar to OJ Howard's situation, where I can just see him slowly just getting more and more phased out. Maybe he'll go somewhere else and be in a better situation. He might end up being a Darren Waller situation where 2 or 3 years from now he's on a different team and we're talking about it completely differently. But right now, I'm out on him. Tight end 42 on Underdog, Fantasy Pros 39. He's undraftable. Don't fuck with him. Now this is a guy this is a sleeper and this is a dynasty pick, but if you are in dynasty and he's on your waivers, go get him. Harrison Bryant. I'm going to say this just publicly on the record. This is my opinion, but when I watch Harrison Bryant play football, just as a guy who's sitting here doing this, not as some scout, not as some talent evaluator, not as some, I'm just a guy who watches football. He looks fucking awesome to me. When I see him, I see shades of Travis Kelce. And people are going to probably oh, you're fucking crazy, blah, blah, blah. That's fine. Maybe I am. But when I watch him play, he looks like that. The way his body moves, the way he's smoothly coming in and out of his route, the way he's using his hands, he's attacking the ball sometimes. I know people say Travis Kelce has really soft hands, and he does, but he also goes after the ball with those soft hands. And you can see shades of that in Harrison Bryant's game. Do yourself a favor, go watch some Harrison Bryant highlights. I know it's highlights on YouTube or whatever. Just go watch them. For a guy that there's upside there. So I want to be on record saying this because I feel like we have a breakout candidate legitimately on our hands as a guy that could be kind of like a Kittle situation where he was drafted late and nobody really knew nothing about him. And boom, here he is. He's a top 3 dynasty tight end. ADP 43, tight end rank on Fantasy Pros 43. I'm not saying go kill somebody for this guy. I'm not saying go sell everything you have for him, but if you can get him on the end of a bench, I would rather have him on the end of my bench now than later. That's my suggestion to you. All right. There's not much talk about these running backs, Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Nick Chubb is going to handle most of the rushing work on the first couple of downs. He's not going to get a lot of passes. We already know that, but he's an incredible pure runner. I was listening to my boys on the Hustle Pod, the FF Hustle Pod. Dwayne McFarland said he has him projected at 5 yards a carry this season, and he said that's like what he's projecting him. That's not his high end projecting for him. That's what he's projecting. So, I mean, he said he doesn't do that. And there's no reason not to. Nick Chubb is that good. This offensive line is that good. He wears people down. And then Kareem Hunt's going to come in and finish him off. He's going to get some passing down work. This is a great tandem. I want one of two of these guys. I want both these guys on my team. They're hard to get, honestly. I traded my only Nick Chubb share for Saquon Barkley, and then Saquon got hurt, so I had to do some finagling. So I don't have Nick Chubb anymore on any of my dynasty teams. It's very sad. I do have a couple of Kareem Hunt shares, and you can start him every single week. What else do you want from a running back? You're running back 2. So Nick Chubb, ADP right now is running back 26. That's too low. Fantasy Pros rank 23. Too low, in my opinion. These are PPR. Fantasy Pros rankings are PPR. Underdog ADP is half PPR. And then Nick Chubb is running back 7, Fantasy Pros, and running back 9 on Underdog. So Kareem Hunt is the better value. They're both great running backs. All right, let's get to this defense. And let's just go ahead and talk about Myles Garrett, because everybody loves Myles Garrett. Okay, he's defensive end. He's on my defensive end ranking. He's a little bit lower if you go on the website. And the reason for that is just that he is not big on the auxiliary stats throughout his career. He does not put up massive impact plays. He has 12, 22, 14, and 18. And you say, yeah, he's in abbreviated seasons. But let's compare that to his stablemate, Jadeveon Clowney, the last 3-4 years, 29, 22, 19. And Jadeveon Clowney is not a guy you think of as being overly disruptive, but he's had more disruptive plays than Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett's better at getting the actual sacks, yes, and he's better at getting the pressures. This is true, but that's because he pins his ears back and he really focuses on getting the quarterback. He does not have a very illustrious resume of other skills. Pass deflections are fairly low for a defensive end. 6, I'm not saying that's like super low, but that's not high for an IDP defensive end. Tackles for loss, he's barely, he's averaging basically 10 a year. That's not super elite numbers from a defensive end. 10 this last year, 11 the year before, 12 the year before. His job is to live in the backfield. Meanwhile, I go over here to Roquan Smith. He had 18 this year. He had 18. So I just, for a guy who's odds-on favorite with Aaron Donald to win Defensive Player of the Year, so much of that is coming off of the brand equity of the team, the brand equity of Myles Garrett, because he is an attractive man, a physical specimen. And in our industry, that's what guys do, is they look at other dudes with their shirts off and they ogle them, and we rank them and we rate them and we judge them. And it's really cool. So I have him lower. I have him as defensive end 7. That's probably going to catch some heat. I don't care. Okay. He's got to do more than get, 45 tackles and 10 sacks, and he just doesn't offer a lot of the auxiliary stats. So at me, fight me. I don't care. Other side of him, Jadeveon Clowney, defensive end 21 for me right now. I think he's being undervalued because he's usually not getting home for the sacks. But again, if you go to the index and you look at his profile over the last couple of years, even though the sacks aren't there, he's been so disruptive with forced fumbles, with tackles for loss, with batting passes. His forced fumbles the last couple of years, 1 last year, 4 the year before, pass deflections, 4 and 3. So he had 7 pass deflections the last 2 years, of which he only started 19 games last year. And that's more than Myles Garrett has in his whole career. So you just have to look at the repertoire of weapons players have and say, how can they score points? Tackle wise too, he's a little bit lower, but again, these have been abbreviated seasons, but you go back to 17, 18, 16, he's going over and close to 50 every season, something Myles Garrett has yet to achieve in his career. again, from an IDP lens, you have to look at the production in the stat sheet. You can't just look at pressures. So while I believe Myles Garrett is a better player, I think that we could live in a world where, A, these are both top 15 defensive line players in 2021, but we could also be living in a world where Clowney, the smaller name, has a better season than Myles Garrett, similar to Montez Sweat, in 2020, this last year, having a better season for IDP fantasy football than Chase Young, the higher premium player. So that's your arbitrage play for the defensive line there. Guys, we're already at 20 minutes, and I still have like 3 positions left. So this one's going to run a little bit long. So bear with me. I'm sorry. I want to give you guys as much good information, though, as I can. Like I said, John Johnson, we'll come back to him. I right now have him as my defensive back 8 on the year. He's notoriously a good coverage player. He's a good line of scrimmage player. He's a really, really solid tackler. And he's a great leader. So, the Browns adding him to the middle of that field, they paid him a decent bit of money. 105 tackles this last year, 8 pass deflections. They're going to get a lot out of John Johnson. It would not surprise me one bit if he wore the green dot for this team this year as the defensive leader over Anthony Walker, who may or may not stay out there for third downs. And I don't think they're going to trust it with the rookie. So it would not surprise me if John Johnson ends up kind of being the leader of this defense. Like I said, right now, defensive back 8. I'm expecting a good year from him. Ronnie Harrison, a bit of a sleeper defensive back here, because I know a lot of people are going to be high on Grant Delpit. Ronnie Harrison has a good draft pedigree coming out of Alabama, which has a long history of very high quality IDP fantasy football safeties. Get my hat straightened out. We got you got Landon Collins. You have Xavier McKinney just came out. Minka Fitzpatrick, Ronnie Harrison himself. So he has a pretty high per snap impact play number. Something that I look at when I see trying to look for kind of like a breakout-ish player. The last 3 years, 8, 16, and 11. Doesn't sound like a lot, but from the defensive back position, those are good numbers. And then when you really look at it a little bit deeper, and he's a guy, he only played 14 games in 2019 and only played 7 games this last year. So those just okay numbers, when you put them on a per game or a per snap basis, are actually really good. So if Ronnie Harrison could get, a completely full and healthy season playing on this really, really good, and what I think is going to be a very disruptive defense, forcing a lot of turnovers probably, and putting some teams in some awkward positions, I think there's something to be had here. So if you're in a league where, you want to punt your defensive back position and take take somebody that has top 12, top 15 upside, but you're not going to have to pay anywhere close to that price for him, Ronnie Harrison's a great play. My final thoughts here, really, Baker Mayfield and Nick Chubb are both going to need new deals this year or after this year. So they're going to be playing hard. I think this is going to be a very exciting season for the Cleveland Browns, both the organization and the fans. I'm really excited to see what they do. I think their defense is outstanding. A lot of top-notch IDP players here. And offensively, like I said, it's not one that I'm really looking to target their wide receivers. I love their running backs, and Baker's cheaper than he probably should be right now. As a low-end quarterback too, he does have the upside to throw quite a few touchdowns. So don't sleep on the Browns this year. And until next time, IDP Army, when we come back, rate us, review us, subscribe, all that good stuff. You know what else to do there. And then I think next time, who we got next show? Bears, Browns, Bengals. Maybe it's the Cowboys. It's Cowboys or Colts. So I don't know. Anyway, till next time, y'all.
Let the rain hit the sand. Build a house on a rock, got a plan. Gotta get stocks, keep them bands. Hear the clock tick, blades on the fan. Used to be mundane on a Monday. Now you have fun day on a Sunday. Cause you switching it up and you living it up. You ain't getting